Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is Friday, the 12th of January 2024, and these are the stories that we'll try to explain from different perspectives during the course of our show. We'll begin with day 98 of the Israel-Palestine war conflict, and of course, the different developments that have been going on. There are two major developments, ladies and gentlemen. The first, of course, is the Israeli response to South Africa genocide case that happened today at the International Court of Justice. This was day 2 of that hearing that the South African side had requested the ICJ to listen to. And now, of course, Israel from its side has been pinpointing everything on Hamas, but of course the reality says otherwise. When you look at the number of casualties that have surpassed 23,400, then I think reality, a reality check also needs to be given to the Israelis and those who support the Israeli side. Nevertheless, the South African side had a very solid argument against Israel, and they were of course listened to yesterday, and today it was Israel's side, and they tried their level best to talk about it. At the same time, there are also the whole situation in the Red Sea has also become more intense. And of course, there is a coalition of different important countries that have gotten together, and they struck the Houthi rebels as a result or as a retaliation of what happened in the Red Sea yesterday. Now, there is a whole reaction statement that has come from not only the governments of Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, and other countries, but also from Joe Biden, the US president, as to why their rationale behind this attack on the Houthis. Whether it is justified or not is another question altogether. We'll be trying to understand that and more in the course of our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns India, and of course what has been happening as far as BJP's politics in the region are concerned ahead of the elections that are going to happen this year in India. We see a lot of developments vis-a-vis Muslims and the Muslim community in India, whether it be the Congress party that has refused to attend the inauguration of the Ram temple. We all know where the Ram temple is being has been constructed at the site of the Babri Mosque. And secondly, also the way a lot of Muslim majority areas, or those where Muslims are in a large number, those madrasa funded education systems are not being catered to financially now by the government since some time, and this is a deliberate effort. Apparently the government said that it's going to do something about it, but the fact remains that tens of thousands of teachers are without pay, without salary, without money. These seems to be different measures that are being taken to appease the Hindu majority or the Hindu fanatics that support the BJP's government. And now that the elections are about to happen in a couple of months' time, this might be one of the tactics. Finally, we'll be talking about the Pentagon that is going to investigate the defense secretary hospitalization. We all remember how nobody got to know where the defense secretary was for quite a number of days, and then it was found out that he was suffering from cancer and that he had been hospitalized due to some complications that resulted because of that. Now, General Lloyd Austin did not inform the White House, and under the current circumstances, well, as per the US, the Israel Palestine conflict was intensifying. The need for Lloyd Austin became even more pertinent, and when he could not be found, this led to many questions that remain unanswered, and of course that is why the investigation will be done by the Pentagon in that respect. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns day 98 of what is happening between Israel and Palestine. There are two important developments, as you very well know: the ICJ and the Houthis and the Red Sea, and the attack by coalition of governments on the Houthi rebels. We've been joined by Javid Husain. He's a former ambassador. Javid Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Javid Sahab, let's begin with the statement that emanated from the president of the US, Joe Biden, on the coalition strikes in the Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen. He says, and I quote, "Today at my direction, US military forces together with the UK and support from other countries like Australia, Bahrain, Canada successfully conducted strikes against a number of targets in Yemen used by Houthi rebels to endanger freedom of navigation in one of the world's most vital waterways." What, sir, are the repercussions?
Well, these strikes have obviously escalated or carry the seeds of further escalation at the regional level, and therefore there's a very dangerous development. The Houthi administration has clarified or asserted and stressed that they have that these strikes will not go unpunished. I think if I'm using their words correctly, and so there is a risk, there is a danger that there will be counteraction, military counteraction by Houthis in some form, and that might lead to further escalation of this conflict in not only, I mean, in the Middle East region as a whole. Something which I think perhaps not even America or European countries and other regional countries want. And the answer to this whole issue lies in a ceasefire in Gaza rather than allowing Israel to continue its genocidal attacks in Gaza and then expecting the rest of the world, or certainly the rest of the Middle East region, to keep quiet about it and not react when their brethren in Gaza and West Bank are being mercilessly killed and bombarded and destroyed. Their homes and hospitals and schools and infrastructure are being destroyed. So I think the whole approach of the Western countries, especially America, is misguided in my judgment.
All right. Now, speaking, I'd like to continue a little bit on the statement by Joe Biden. I'd like to understand your perspective on it. The statement says that the reaction that has come from the attacks that have come on the areas that are controlled by Houthi rebels in Yemen is in response to the continued, I'd like to quote, illegal, dangerous, destabilizing Houthi attacks against vessels, including commercial shipping transiting the Red Sea. In your point of view, is this justified, or is this just a pretext to extend the war that is currently happening in Palestine? And B, if they talk about continued illegal, dangerous and destabilizing attacks, shouldn't this be applied to what is happening in Palestine as well?
Yes, of course. Nobody can justify military attacks or armed attacks on civilian commercial shipping, whether in the Red Sea or anywhere else in the in the Indian Ocean or Arabian Sea or Mediterranean Sea. There is no quarrel or dispute or argument on that particular point. But the question that, or the point that I would like to stress is that there is a background to this whole development. The background is that Israel is now engaged in a genocidal attack on Gaza, the people, the innocent people and civilians in Gaza, and therefore, unless the international community or the leaders of this so-called international community like US and UK and other Western countries, they cannot expect that while Israel continues with its atrocities in Gaza, there will not be any reaction from other countries in the region who have sympathetic towards the cause of the Palestinian cause. Even the development in Gaza is the result of a long military occupation of Gaza and West Bank by Israel since 1967, and its atrocities, its injustices it has committed, the growing settlement activity in West Bank. So, I mean, these things will, and it was expected that they will ultimately result in some kind of a reaction in military form, and that is what happened on October 7. And the solution or the way out of this development is that America should take the lead. Since it is the main supporter of Israel, it should take the lead to persuade Israel to immediately cease fire and go for a peaceful settlement of the Palestine issue, which means withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza and West Bank, and a peace settlement in the form of a Palestine state with Al-Quds as its capitals, living side by side in peace and security with Israel. Unless they take this kind of steps in that direction, this area and the Gaza and Palestine area will remain destabilized, and there will be continued armed conflicts from time to time. And you can always pick up one particular incident and say that the other side is aggressive, but you have to see the whole thing in proper historical perspective, and only then you can draw the right conclusions. And there are historical perspective is that Israel, in violation of UN Security Council resolutions, UN General Assembly resolution, has been an illegal military occupation of West Bank and Gaza, and therefore Israel is the guilty party, as has been now charged in the International Court of Justice by South Africa also, that they are committing genocide in Gaza.
All right, before we go to the International Court of Justice, I'd like to state three statements from three different quarters, and I'd like your point of view on these, on their importance. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia calls for restraint and avoiding escalation. I'm talking of what is happening in the Red Sea. Emphasizes the importance of maintaining the security and stability of the Red Sea region. Jordan says the Israeli war crimes against Palestinians were to blame for the heightened regional tension. And the United Nations Human Rights Office says that Israel had repeatedly failed to uphold international humanitarian law during its incursion in Gaza. How important are these three statements combined? And what more, in your point of view, needs to be done by the neighborhood countries of Palestine, and also those countries that hold some weightage as far as important organizations like the UN are concerned?
Well, it is true that this advice of exercising restraint so that the conflict does not escalate and widen at the regional level is a sound one and needs careful attention. At the same time, what the Jordanians have said also deserves attention, that if the advice for exercising restraint is applicable mostly to the aggressor party. The aggressor party in this particular case, in the Palestine issue, is Israel, as I have pointed out earlier. So if international community or important countries in the international community like US and other Western countries, they need peace and quiet and peaceful atmosphere in the Middle East, they must exercise some pressure, political pressure, moral pressure on Israel, and persuade it to cease fire and go for a political settlement and peaceful settlement of the Palestine issue. That is, but you can't expect that if Israel continues with its atrocities, its aggression, its acts of aggression, its acts of genocide against the Palestinian people and the people of the Middle East region, or people of the Islamic world, or the Arab countries, they should remain quiet and just keep on tolerating such inhuman acts and genocidal acts on the part of Israel in Gaza.
All right. Now, Ambassador Javid Husain Sahab, let's come to the ICJ. Now, the ICJ President John Donoghue has ended today's proceedings, and this also brings to an end this two-day hearing into South Africa's case of genocide against Israel on its war on Gaza. Before leaving, Mr. Donoghue said the court will announce its decision in the coming days. It's a very important decision. But here are the 5 genocidal acts that Israel is accused of having perpetrated during the war against Palestine: mass killings of Palestinians, bodily and mental harm, forced displacement and food blockade, destruction of the healthcare system, and preventing Palestinian births. These are very, very solid and very strong arguments from the South African side. What is going to happen? What kind of judgment are you expecting?
Well, obviously, I cannot speak on behalf of the International Court of Justice because the judges sitting there will have to make up their mind. But from my point of view, or my assessment of what has been happening in Gaza, I am convinced that Israel has been guilty of genocidal actions in Gaza, and it should be held guilty, and it should be asked to immediately cease fire and allow humanitarian assistance to be shipped or sent to the people in Gaza, and then some progress should be made towards a peace settlement of the whole Palestine issue. According to this 1948 Convention on Genocide,
That both are
this
signatories to,
convention.
both Israel and South Africa are signatories to this convention of 1948.
Yes, that's right. Both are signatories. That is why Israel has been forced to defend itself in that forum, because both are signatories. And this convention clearly says that when some actions are taken which are aimed at destroying in whole or in part an ethnic or religious or racial or political group, then that amounts to genocide. And what Israel has done in Gaza, where almost by now more than about, if I remember correctly, 23,000 Palestinians or people of Gaza have been martyred. Thousands of women and children have been killed and martyred. This is
10,000 children, sir. 10,000 children.
10,000 children and women. In addition, I think about 3,000 women. So this is I mean, it's a genocide in quite a practical picture of what genocide means. And therefore, Israel must be taken to task. I, of course, cannot dictate to ICJ, but I'm hopeful that after hearing the case, strong case against Israel for having committed genocidal actions in Gaza, that they will come to the conclusion that Israel is indeed guilty, and that they will issue what is called emergency measures for asking Israel to cease fire in that territory. Of course, we also know
Ambassador Javid Husain, therein lies the dichotomy. Do you feel if there is a judgment that goes in favor of South Africa, will Israel abide by it? Will Israel go towards for a ceasefire if that is what the judgment has proclaimed? Or will it do what the United Nations also did? And you know, you remember the Israeli ambassador, how he lambasted the United Nations Secretary General and saying that he did not even deserve the post that he was in.
You see that if such a decision is arrived at by the International Court of Justice, it will be a major blow to Israel's moral and political standing in the world. And even in the Western countries, there will be increasing questions about what it has been doing in Gaza. So we should not therefore underestimate the importance of such a decision by International Court of Justice. At the same time, ICJ does not have any power to enforce its decisions. For that purpose, such decisions must be taken to the UN Security Council, which alone can adopt a resolution calling for enforcement of that decision. And as we are aware, the United States is a permanent member with veto power in that body, and it is unlikely that it will ever allow that kind of decision to be implemented. But still, the value and importance of such a decision by ICJ against Israel should not be underestimated.
Okay, I understand that. Javid Saab, our Foreign Office spokesperson said Pakistan has supported the application filed by South Africa. She adds Pakistan considers this legal action timely and an important step towards holding Israel accountable. How do you see Pakistan's stance? How do you see Pakistan's support for Palestine? And how important is it for Pakistan, that is a leading Muslim country amongst the Committee of Nations?
Well, I think this statement that has been issued by the spokesperson of the Foreign Office is again was very much needed and timely, and I think our government has done the right thing by supporting the initiative taken by South Africa. My only wish is that it would have been even better if OIC countries collectively, or the Arab countries within the framework of Arab League, had taken some initiative on these lines and taken the case to the International Court of Justice. But still, even if that was not possible for a variety of reasons, the fact that many Muslim countries and Arab countries have expressed their support for South African initiative in International Court of Justice on acts of genocide by Israel in Gaza, I think we should welcome that development. And similarly, our Pakistan Foreign Office statement needs to be welcomed and supported.
When it comes to the Israeli side, while they were presenting their side of the arguments at the International Court of Justice, I'd like to refer to what Israel's Deputy Attorney Gilad Noam said. He said South Africa had failed to make the case for provisional measures. And he was, he and other lawyers who were representing Israel were just going on and on about Hamas and how Hamas had done this and how Hamas had done that. The fact remains that if you compare the two sides, what happened, the casualties on the Israeli side and then the casualties on the Palestinian side, there is no comparison whatsoever. And if Israel wanted to seek justice, it itself could have gone to the International Court of Justice with this. Instead, it resorted to a brutality that hasn't been seen in the last few decades. How do you see Israel's justification in the ICJ?
I think there is it's a very weak and poor and invalid justification that Israel is trying to promote or project. First of all, the Hamas attack did not take place in a vacuum, as the UN Secretary General himself stated, I think in the month of October, while commenting on this development. It was the result of stifling Israeli military occupation of Gaza and West Bank and the helplessness and hopelessness of the Palestinians, which resulted in what Hamas did or in its attack on Israel on 7th October. So I think that is perhaps something that needs to be kept in mind while judging what Israel has been up to in Gaza in terms of its military activities and killing of Palestinians and destroying their infrastructure. So therefore, from my point of view, there is no justification which is acceptable from what I have heard so far. Israel has not been able to put up any valid justification, and then its military actions in in Gaza violate the principle of proportionality. That even if Hamas had done it, I think if my memory serves me right, about 1,200 people were either lost their lives or they were taken prisoner in the Hamas attack on 7 October. And now at this stage, about 23,000 Gazan people of Gaza have been martyred. So there is no sense of proportionality. And then civilians applying or giving collective punishment to people, irrespective of the fact whether they are guilty or not guilty, again violates principles of international law and the amount
people food or water or medicine, bombard hospitals and bombard schools and mosques on what pretext? This is part and parcel of genocide, and I really hope, and I think a lot of eyes will be on the decision that will be taken by the International Court of Justice in the next couple of days, and I hope it comes in favor of South Africa, because will be a very much needed shot in the arm for those who deserve justice and who deserve peace. Finally, I'd like to understand, coming back to the situation in the Red Sea, the Israelis have been talking about another intifada. Then we see the whole situation escalating with the attacks and counterattacks. And the Iraqi Prime Minister's advisor has also warned that the West is expanding the conflict in the region. Will it actually be extended, or do you feel that there could be a pause somehow, somewhere, under some pressure by some quarters, or do you feel this is a deliberate attempt by certain important quarters to expand the current situation?
I think what, as I stated earlier, what Houthis have done was obviously in response to the crimes against humanity and war crimes that Israel has committed in Gaza, number one. And the Western countries cannot expect that the rest of the world will remain quiet just because Israel, which is basically their virtual outpost in the Middle East for projection of their power and for maintaining control on the region. It's an important instrument of Western policy. So that is the real story. The Americans and other Western countries support Israel because they know and they created Israel and they are supporting it. They have been supporting it as an outpost of the Western world in the Middle East to control its energy resources and to control the vital trade routes which pass through Middle East. Therefore, their support to Israel is likely to continue. I am afraid I don't see any chance of that attitude changing, number one. Number two, but they will also see whether the people of the region are willing to sort of accept the atrocities which have been committed by Israel in Gaza and are being committed elsewhere, even in the West Bank. And if the reaction is strong, the governments of the region take heart and put up a strong front against those things, and then Americans and Western countries may be willing to reconsider their position and put pressure on Israel to cease fire and go for a long-term solution of the Palestine issue. So it all depends how strongly our Arab brothers in the Middle East and how strongly the Islamic world as a whole act in a united way to oppose Israel's act of aggression in Gaza.
Thank you so very much, Javid Husain, former ambassador, to have joined us, to have talked to us about day 98 of this conflict that is going on. And as far as the latest reports are coming out, it seems to be extending beyond Palestine. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's hope better sense prevails amongst the quarters that are involved in this war. Let's come to our second story. And our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the BJP politics. Nothing new there. Their politics have been always anti-minority, anti-Muslim, anti-Kashmiri, and pro-Hindu, and propagating their Hindutva regime and their Hindutva philosophy, their RSS philosophy that goes against all norms of pluralism or democracy. And then they conduct elections saying that this is the largest democracy, a pluralistic country that is going to hold elections in 2024. Anyways, that is extremely contestable. What is happening right now is that the BJP is deliberately targeting Muslims again pre-elections so that they can appease their Hindu fanatics or the BJP supporters. There are different tactics that they are using, just like they have been using in the past. To discuss that and more, we've been joined by Dr. Mujahid Gilani. He's a Kashmiri leader and he's in the studios. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, what is happening is the inauguration of the quote-unquote Ram Temple, and we all know the history of the Ram Temple and Babri Masjid. And the timing is A, very strange, and B, there is a lot of counter arguments that are also being raised by the opposition parties such as the Congress that is refusing to attend this inauguration, saying that this is a plan of political ideology of BJP and the RSS, and that this inauguration is a campaign gimmick. How true are their claims?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you for having me once again over in the studios. As far as your question is concerned, let us turn the pages of the history, go back to the demolition of Babri Masjid that was back in the 1990s, and let us for once picture the Indian government at that time. The Prime Minister Narasimha Rao and the party that he belonged to was Indian National Congress. So today when the Indian National Congress comes up and talks about the demolition of Babri Masjid or the construction of Ram Temple, as we consider its preliminary inauguration that is to be held in the 22nd of January, yes, for once, I do agree with the Indian National Congress that BJP wants to portray this preliminary inauguration as a successful completion of its agenda, the manifesto that it had given to the people of India, that we will be demolishing Babri Masjid, we will be constructing the Ram Temple, and here it is. We have fulfilled our promises. So what Indian National Congress actually sees here is a failure of its own government. It is not as if the Indian National Congress has become a secular pluralistic party.
But this is what I also wanted to understand, is that don't you feel that statements such as these coming from the Congress or other parties are also political gimmicks?
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if you see the Bharat Jodo Yatra by Rahul Gandhi, was essentially a part of the same thing. What the people over there are doing at this point in time is essentially to win games and numbers in front of the people of India, be it BJP or be it the Indian National Congress, or even if we talk about Mehbooba Mufti and Umar Abdullah in the same context in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So yes, again we need to understand that be it BJP or be it Indian National Congress, both of them have held the same policies for the Muslims of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in particular, and generally for the mainland Indian Muslims. It has not been different as far as both these parties are concerned.
Well, let's continue with the statement of the Congress party that says that religion is a personal matter. I'd really like to decipher this quote. They say religion is a personal matter, but that the BJP is using its political motives to build a temple. There are two sides to this question. First, hasn't this always been a BJP ideology to destroy any evidence of pluralism in the country and at the same time promote an RSS and BJP ideology that is based on Hindutva and Hindu-related mythology and has nothing to do with any other religion apart from the Hindu religion? Secondly, I referred to Congress party as well. They say religion is a personal matter. Since when was religion a personal matter in India?
You're very much right about it, and let's once again turn the pages of history and go back. When we talk about the 2002 Gujarat riots, we understand that not only Narendra Modi by itself played a very pivotal role, we also know that the name of Yogi Adityanath,
yes,
the other guy who has now become a perfect villain for the Muslims of the mainland India as well. So when we talk about such kind of incidents, when we talk about religion being brought into politics, BJP has been actually harvesting on it. This is what BJP's manifesto has been ever since for the past 10-20 years. If we understand, we have had a picture of Narendra Modi being circulated on the social media when he was quite young, and even in those times we could see a banner hanging from his back about the abrogation of Article 35A and 370. And this is what India has done. Even in 2019, 5th of August, when the unilateral actions were taken, BJP had actually brought it forward to the people of India that this is the time now you can go to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, get their women to the mainland India and marry them. See, this is what their thoughts is, and this statement has been essentially issued by the Chief Minister. The political party office holders, the actual bureaucratic office holders have been providing such kind of vilifying statements, have been stigmatizing the Muslims. And this 2002 Gujarat riots has not only been one incident. We have seen it in the mainland India in the form of so-called laws being emplaced to marginalize the Muslims. The Citizenship Amendment Act, the people who went stateless in Assam after this kind of a law that was passed. So we need to understand that once BJP has always taken religion as a political tool, one. Two, and Congress definitely as an opposition party has always been opposing it and considering it as a personal matter, which on the contrary, whenever they have been in the government, has never been so.
And that is very interesting, as you know, if you kind of study politics in India, you will see a whole range of politicking that has been going on since the last few decades.
Even now, if you see the local workers of BJP and the RSS, they're telling the Muslims about a program of Ghar Wapsi program, turning back into Hindus or converting themselves into Hinduism or RSS goons. That is the only way of staying back in India. Otherwise, you're going to be killed.
Now, speaking of the inauguration of the Ram temple, there is a lot of pressure on shopkeepers and malls across India to put up banners, for the inauguration of this so-called temple. These and others have been tactics of coercion that the BJP has been using time and again. Will these work for Indian elections this year?
if you look into the Indian history about it, such kind of gimmicks and such kind of acts have always been carried out in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the biggest practical example of the facade of normalcy. This is exactly the same that India is essentially carrying out, Indian authority that is, are carrying out in the mainland India. Supposedly, if you force or coerce a Muslim shopkeeper into hanging a taringa, into hanging something that emblems the Ram temple, what are you pointing towards? Isn't this curbing the religious freedom? Isn't this talking about that you cannot practice your religion, which is essentially contradictory to the India's own constitution? Article 14, Article 15, Article 29 of the Indian Constitution give essentially a complete religious freedom to whichever minority is residing inside the Indian dominion. But take a look at what is happening practically. The mosques at this point in time in the mainland Indian dominion are being converted into temples. And if they are not being converted into temples, they are being damaged, they are being rampaged. And that is what the local RSS goon is trying to tell the Muslims. You cannot survive in India because this is no longer Hindustan, it's going to be Bharat. You cannot live in Aligarh because Aligarh is no longer Aligarh, this is now Harigarh. And this is going to be the RSS India from now on.
Now, you talked about, people, the Indian government trying to change the mosques and everything. That brings me to two states, Uttar Pradesh and Assam. Let's begin with Uttar Pradesh, where payments to teachers of subjects such as mathematics and science in madrasas has been stopped since some time, and that involves 21,000 teachers in Uttar Pradesh that have been that are now devoid of their basic salary. Is this also not a tactic to please hardline Hindus?
Well, you see, if you go into certain studies and researches that have been published lately, such as that of the Center of New Economic Research Center, we understand that the Muslims have been marginalized every time, and it's been the Muslims in particular, although we understand that there are several other minorities living in the mainland Indian dominion, but Muslims have been targeted, vilified, marginalized specifically. If you consider the educational perspective in the mainland Indian dominion, the Muslims able to reach to the higher education centers, as I was going through the research, it's been only 5% as compared to the other marginalized tribes or the other marginalized communities. Likewise, if you go into the central bureaucratic states, the main positions that have been held in the Indian, such as that we have the CSS over here, they have the Indian PS2. So over there we understand that the Muslim percentage has been only 2% to 3%. This is what India has essentially been, whichever government has it been so, it has essentially enforced this, that no matter what, the Muslims must not progress at all. And this is what we have seen not only in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but also in the mainland India.
From Uttar Pradesh, I'd also like to understand your perspective on Assam, where hundreds of Muslim religious schools are being converted into conventional schools. There already is a lot of polarization in India as we speak, with all the incidents that the BJP-led government is involving itself into, whether it be against the Muslims, whether it be against the Sikhs, whether it be against the Christians, and the list goes on. Don't you feel this is going to further create polarization within India?
Absolutely.
And can India afford polarization to this extent?
See, the problem is that when we talk about polarization and division based on the religious ethnicities, India doesn't really understand the cost of it. For once, the BJP party, the BJP ruling party, once again trying to win the elections, has presented with the same card, that is Pakistan bashing and oppressing the mainland Indian Muslims. It doesn't really care about the economic cost of oppression of the Muslims. We must understand that it's a number of Indian Muslims who are working abroad in the foreign countries, such as that of the GCC. And we must also understand that whichever pact agreements that the GCC or the G20 countries are essentially going to come forward with is going to involve the Indian Muslims as well. But as far as the marginalization or polarization is concerned, the only trump card that the BJP government has is to appease the hardliner Hindus, or the people who are essentially following the same ideology of RSS. And that is why we see the conversion of mosques, the biased attitude of the Indian police, or in fact the killing of imam masjids, or the burning down of the mosques in the mainland India, and as well as the hijab row as well in the Udupi and Karnataka province state. So once again, you need to understand that BJP is on a very single agenda, on a very single pathway, and that pathway is appeasing the hardliner Hindus.
But you know, at the cost of pluralism, at the cost of democracy, or any kind of value whatsoever. Muslims and rights groups such as Human Rights Watch say the nationalist groups have threatened and harassed religious minorities, including Muslims, with impunity under the BJP. Do you feel if this whole policy continues, if after the elections BJP comes back into power again, will India head towards an implosion? We already have on record the statement by the head of Genocide Watch that says that India is on the brink or has entered a certain phase of genocide as well. What happens to India if this attitude by the BJP-led government continues in the next months and years?
The US Department of Religious Freedom had already in fact sanctioned India about keeping India's name in the list of worrisome countries where the right to religious freedom was violated very often. So for once, we understand that the International Committee does see what is happening in India, but all the same we also see that the International Committee has turned a blind eye to it. BJP is going to try to win the elections, no matter what, no matter how. It is going to talk about the Azad Kashmir province, the Azad Kashmir part as well. It is going to essentially call this as the Pakistan occupied Kashmir and once again try a fake surgical strike for it. 2, India is definitely going to marginalize the Indian Muslims, oppress them further so they can appease the hardliner Hindu majority over there. And 3rd, India BJP is going to fulfill its promises, whichever promise it had made in its manifesto before the elections. And we understand it has very well done so till now. The Ram Mandir's preliminary inauguration or the Article 35A and 370's abrogation were a part of it. So once again, the year of election 2024 is going to see several other incidents as it unfolds
now, speaking
further.
of several other incidents happening before the elections, I'd like to refer to a book that a former High Commissioner of India to Pakistan, Ajay Bisaria, has taken out. It's called Anger Management, the Troubled Diplomatic Relations Between India and Pakistan. And this is a deliberate attempt to again use the Pakistan card because he refers to what happened in February 2019. And there has been a very strong reaction by the Foreign Office spokesperson, Mumtaz Zahra Baloch, who has disparaged this book and of course as an attempt to advance India's fictitious narratives. Will India continue to use the Muslim card, the Pakistan card, whenever and howsoever it deems?
Perhaps we need to talk to the Indian mainland public about it. We need to understand whatever the people of India think about BJP and Pakistan, because at the grassroots level, for once, over several interviews, we understand that the mainland Indian people were not as extremist as they have been portrayed. And we have several examples in the civil society of India who talk about the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the human rights violations that the Indian forces are carrying out over there. But unfortunately, we have been seeing from 2014 till now that the Indian people have voted BJP, and BJP's sole agenda is either Pakistan bashing or oppressing the mainland Indian Muslims. 2024 is going to decide what the people of India are going to tell to the world. If they vote again for the BJP, we understand that the pluralistic, so-called greater and shining democratic India is no longer going to exist, because it's the people of India who have voted for a fascist, who have voted for an oppressive regime, and that is the Bharatiya Janata Party.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mujahid Gilani, to have joined us and to have talked to us about the Indian tactics pre-elections that are again targeting Pakistan and again targeting the Muslims of India.
Definitely.
I don't know whether better sense will prevail or not, but I don't think that is going to happen anytime soon. The only way better sense will prevail when the people of India will vote for people other than those who belong to the BJP. And I really wish that happens, because that is going to change the regional scenario.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right about it. And definitely this is something that must prevail. Sanity and the neutrality must prevail.
I haven't seen the sanity or neutrality prevail, Dr. Mujahid Gilani, in the last few years as far as India is concerned. We can always remain optimistic or cautiously optimistic. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us. Let's come to our last story, ladies and gentlemen. That concerns the U.S. defense chief's hospitalization and the Pentagon that is now going to investigate it. Why? Because the Pentagon's Inspector General's office says that it will investigate General Lloyd Austin's failure to report his hospitalization to the rest of the government, as the defense secretary faces mounting criticism over his silence on his health. Now, General Lloyd Austin kept President Joe Biden as well as the U.S. Congress in the dark about his prostate cancer diagnosis for weeks. He did not inform them about the hospitalization at the beginning of the year that led to growing calls for him to either resign or to be fired. But Joe Biden does not want that. He wants all the senior people that belong to the government to continue to stay. He, of course, is now going to be investigated by the Pentagon. What the Pentagon will decide at the end, that we will, of course, be sharing with you as well. But this is a very interesting development as far as General Lloyd Austin is concerned, because his presence, when it was required at the time of the Israel-Palestine conflict, was extremely important, and he was not there. Whatever reasons be, I think it would have been I mean, I'm nobody to judge on that, but maybe he should have informed at least the president of the US as far as his absence was concerned. Nevertheless, we wish him a quick and a healthy recovery. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. Today is Friday, so of course the weekend is ahead of us. Be careful as far as different diseases that are prevalent in Pakistan are concerned. Follow the SOPs, but have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you inshallah on Monday. Allah Hafiz.